think about a time in your life when something disrupted your world. Maybe it was a situation where it was someone did something or they said something that caused emotional stress. Maybe it was something that happened that shouldn't have happened, it didn't work out as planned. I mean, this is a sports paper, so maybe it was a play that didn't work out. Maybe it was a game that you lost. Maybe you didn't make the team one year. Maybe it was an injury. Whatever it is, think about this disruption. And think about how you responded to it. I had an experience a number of years ago. I was on tour with a band I was the opening act with my magic show. And we made our way all the way down from Massachusetts down to Washington, D.C., and all the way up to Burlington, Vermont. And on our way down through Pennsylvania, we stopped for a show in Pittsburgh. And this is where the story gets exciting, because it was in Pittsburgh, and we had just finished unloading all of the band's equipment. In fact, I think that's the real reason why they invited me, not to do my magic show, but to carry all of their equipment. So we just finished unloading all of their stuff, and I went back out to the tour van to get my suitcase so I could set up for my set. But just as I got outside, I became abundantly aware of two street thugs lurking about. Everyone go, ooh. Now I knew there were street thugs because I watched television. These were just like the ones on TV. They had hoods and everything. Have you ever seen a real life street thug? I mean, we're not too far from the people, right? We've probably seen them. My gut instinct was to retreat back to the safety of the club and wait for the thugs to scamper off. That was my gut instinct. But that's not what I did because I hesitated. And when we hesitate, we get into trouble. I was thinking to myself that I don't actually know that these are street thugs. That's just the media. That's just the fake news. That's just society. That's just my fears, my assumptions, telling me something about these two gentlemen that I truly know nothing about. So I ignored my assumptions and I went to the van. And you know what happened, right? I got mugged. Turns out sometimes our gut is trying to tell us the right thing. Now, here's the thing. I had never been mugged before, so this was all very exciting. And it all happened so quickly. I mean, before I knew it, they were scampering off with my wallet. I grabbed my suitcase. I went inside the club just in time to be told that it was time to start my set. And so I walked on the stage, still in a daze, and I said, I was just mugged outside. And everyone just laughed. Because they thought it was part of the show. They didn't think I was really mugged. They said, no, I'm serious. It's terrible to be here. I don't want to be in Pittsburgh anymore. Call the police. I want to go home. Now, part of the reason that I'm telling you this story is because it all happened so quickly. And it took me a while to process everything. But once I did process this, I realized something quite profound. And this is why I'm telling you this. I realized that the muggers were actually rather nice. It was all in their words. Our words have power. Our words have the power to lift us up, and they also have the power to drag us down. And as they stole my wallet, these street thugs did their part to help build me up. This is what they said after pushing me up against the van. They said, stay cool. Give it up. Did you catch it? Now, at the time, I didn't catch it right away. It took me a little while to realize what they had just said. Stay cool. Give it up. In order to stay cool, you have to already be cool. They thought I was a cool guy, right? It's all about this narrative, right? Now, part of the other reason that I'm telling you this is that frustrating experiences, they can have the power to really teach us things if we're willing to listen, if we're willing to take a step back and really listen and see what they have to teach us. And I realized something kind of interesting that day in Pittsburgh. I now know the true meaning of the name Pittsburgh Steelers. Oh, thank you. I'm the best sound guy in the world. it's a true story. It's an absurd story, but it is a true story. And I used to tell that story in one of my magic shows just as a silly story to share. But one day, after the performance, someone came up to me afterwards and he said that he really liked the Pittsburgh story. And I'm always curious to know what is resonating most with Pittsburgh. So I asked him what it was that he appreciated so much. And he said that if he had been in that same situation, he wouldn't have been able to find a way to laugh at it. Now, until that time, I never really thought of this way of thinking as anything different or anything special. But him saying this really got me curious to really dive deep into this. And I realized that you can take two different people and put them into the same situation. And one person can walk away feeling frustrated and bitter, while someone else can walk away from the same situation fascinated by the whole thing. The implication is that regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the criticisms that we may face, we have the opportunity to truly look at every situation as an opportunity to respond with fascination, to build ourselves up, or with frustration, to give up. So I'm going to ask you again about that frustrating situation that you had in mind at the beginning. What was that trigger that you had? So the question becomes, how did you respond to this? Now think about this. We're all coming to this room from different places. All walks of life, all different examples. And yet we're all gathered here in the same room. And yet even though we're all here in the same room, we're all experiencing something different that we can't do. It's because of all the different perspectives that we're using to interpret these events around us. Now, if we wanted to change our experience, we could, of course, leave the room. It's probably warmer out, colder out there anyway, right? We could, of course, just leave the room, but sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes we get into situations where we just can't up and leave. But yet, sometimes we do have that opportunity. I had another experience, same year, interestingly, a number of years ago. I was booked to do a magic show at a cancer benefit in Wilbraham. My role was to go group to group doing magic tricks for every group. I would do some tricks over here, give them a little mini show, then I would move on to the next group, give them a show. That's how the show was supposed to go. But that's not what happened. I show up to this gig at the Scantic Valley YMCA. I show up and I immediately get attacked by a swarm of killer kids. I tell you, it was an ambush. I didn't have a chance to even try to defend myself. I was just completely attacked. So either I was trying to perform magic with all these rabid kids like banging up against me, literally reaching into my pockets and taking things out, knocking things out of my hand. I was trying to do magic in this. At one point, I was trying to do a card. And to my credit, by the way, I really gave it a go. I mean, I really tried to make this work. So there I was, trying to do a card trick. One of the kids knocks cards out of my hand, and I just take a mental step back. And I think to myself, how am I going to get through this? And then I asked a more important question, how much am I getting paid for this? Nothing. This was volunteer. I had no skin in the game. I didn't have to put up with this. So this is what I did. I threw the cards over my shoulder. I said, see ya, and I left. It felt so good. It felt so empowering just to walk away from a situation that we really do not have to put up with. How many of you have experienced this before? Not literally a magic show, but have you ever experienced something where things weren't going the way you were expected? It wasn't what you wanted it to be, and you just wanted to walk away. How many of you have experienced this? Many, too many times. We are all in this together. And if we want to change our experience, we can of course leave. But what about those situations where we can't? What about those situations where the disruption to our world isn't from something outside of us, but it's within us? Maybe it's an emotional block or a mental block. What then? I would argue that that we can still change our experiences in these situations. And this is my thesis, and perhaps you've probably already guessed it. We can change our experience by changing our perspective. Now, as I was walking up here, I heard someone whisper that they were hoping I was going to do a magic trick. Well, you're in luck. Everyone go, yay! Yay!
That was an enthusiastic yay.
That was an enthusiastic yay.
That was really enthusiastic.
Yeah, you can tell that they're sports fanatics. This is also kind of like a riddle, though. It's like a thought experiment. With a knot tied in the handkerchief, how can I get the knot out without me untying? How do we do this? Who said it? What's your name? Daniel? I did. All right. Good. Now, Daniel had the right answer. He said, if you can't untie it, just slide it off. Because I think you saw that I did tie a very special type of knot in this. This is called a slip knot. All you have to do is tie it the right way, then you just slip it right off. It works every time. You just tie it on, you slip it right off. And every time I do this, you know what people say to me, Daniel? You don't know?
That's cheating.
That's cheating. Well, I suppose if it wasn't a magic trick, it would be cheating. But people ask me, they say Jonas, because that's my name. They say, Jonas, do it again. They ask me, Jonas, do it again. Almost in unison, thank you. Well, there's the thing, I can't do it again, because there's a rule in magic. You never do the same trick twice for the same audience. Daniel, do you know why this is?
We know for sure.
What's that?
We know the trick.
That's exactly right. You already know what's going to happen. It was a surprise. You have a better chance of figuring it out, right? But this is kind of what positivity is all about. Thinking ahead, thinking about all the different possibilities. But Daniel, if the rule is that I can't do this again, I can just have someone else do it again. Will you please stand up over here, please? Give me a nice big hand. All right, Daniel. Have you ever been in a magic show before?
Maybe.
Maybe. He doesn't want to give it away. All right. Daniel, here's what you're going to do. You're going to hang on to the handkerchief, one hand on each side. You're going to pull the handkerchief nice and tight. You're going to let go with your left hand. This isn't easy. You're going to take your hand. You're going to wave it over the knot. And you're going to say the magic words. Abracadabra. I've seen this before. It has been a magic show. That works. Take your hand, wrap it around the knot, and just pull the knot right up. One more big hand right there. So it takes a situation, and we have these rules. Sometimes they're our own self-imposed rules. Sometimes they're rules imposed by someone else. But working within those rules, we're able to get to a successful outcome, right? One of my favorite comedians is a man named Stephen Wright. And he has mastered the art of the one-liner. And he really speaks of the power of this idea of shifting our perspective on things, to look at things in a new way. He says this. He says, sometimes even when you lose, you actually win. Very appropriate. We're going to a football game. Sometimes even when you lose, you actually win. He says it's kind of like playing a game of musical electric chairs. Very smart, right thing to say. The thing is, that's a game you don't even want to play. That's a game you don't want to win, a game you shouldn't even play. And this brings up a good point. Some of the most frustrating experiences in our lives are when we find ourselves playing games that we shouldn't even be playing. Now, the actor Will Rogers speaks to the same idea in a slightly different way. And it's worth sharing here. He says that the worst thing that can happen to you could be the best thing for you if you don't let it get the best of you. Now, this is worth repeating. The worst thing could be the best thing, so long as you don't let it get the best of you. This is easier said than done. But I know from personal experience, and I know several of you probably have your own examples of this, that when you work on this, when you practice this, when you hone this ability every day to consciously choose fascination rather than frustrating, it will reveal a whole other world to you. But you don't have to take my word for it or anyone's word for it. You can take the word of science. There's research that backs this stuff up. According to research, it's shown that 50% of our lives is outside of our control. They call this a set point in our DNA. It's decided by our DNA. In other words, we can't decide who our ancestors are. We can't control who our parents and grandparents and great-great-great-great-great-grandparents are. To try and control that would be silly. So 50% of our lives out of our control. Now another 10% is our circumstances. It's the environments that we find ourselves in, right? So that's 10% of our lives. It's the things that happen to us. But the last 40%, and this is the most encouraging part of all, this is a real game changer. 40% of our lives, it's our choices, our intentional activities. It's the things that we choose to do, whether by default or by design. In other words, what we choose to focus on has the ability to change our experiences. The psychologist Dr. Rick Hansen supports this claim. In fact, he says that how we respond to our circumstances can have a significant impact on our lives by literally changing the neural networks in our brain. I'm not a scientist, but I know how to read. I don't know the science behind it, but he says what we focus on changes the neural networks in our brain through something that he calls conscious activity. Repeat after me. Conscious activity.
Conscious activity.
Look what just happened. We had a conscious activity. Okay. He calls this, he uses the example of a spotlight attached to a vacuum cleaner. So imagine a vacuum cleaner, and at the end of the vacuum cleaner, there's a big spotlight on it. According to this model, this is what our brain is. Whatever we focus on, what we give our attention to, it gets highlighted by that spotlight. Ignoring everything else, our experience becomes defined by what we're focusing on. But because it's attached to a vacuum cleaner, it gets sucked into our brain. Literally having our experiences defined by those small details. There's a book by Eleanor H. Porter called Pollyanna. And in the book, the title character, Pollyanna, has a game called the Glad Game. Have you ever heard of this game? Some of you have. How are you? Have you read the book? You know, I actually haven't read the book, but I read the chapter that this is. Is it a good book? I've been quoting the book.
When I was like 10.
Oh, okay. But you remember it, right?
Yeah.
Are you glad that you read it? He doesn't want to answer. That's okay. Well, the important thing here is that this glad game, Pollyanna shared with us what this glad game is. In any circumstance, no matter what it is, you find a reason to be glad about it. And she gave an example of how she used it. She said one day her father ordered her a doll. And when the order came in, the company didn't send a doll, they sent a pair of crutches. It's disappointing. It's not even close to a doll. But she says that when things don't work out as planned, when life throws us surprises, this is when we play the glad game. So what do you suppose Pollyanna was glad about by getting the crutches instead of the doll? What do you think? Well, yeah. So that's actually very much related to what she said. In your name? Joseph, nice to see you. So in case you couldn't hear, he says that, well, at least she's ready if she ever does break her leg, right? So that's one thing to be glad about, that she's ready. Now, in the book, she just said that she was glad that she didn't need the crutches. That's all she was happy about. It's taking a negative situation and shining that spotlight vacuum cleaner on something else. In other words, what we choose to focus on has the ability to change our experience. And a lot of times it's just this internal narrative that we're telling ourselves. The words that we tell ourselves have the power to build us up or drag us down.
What did you do for work?
When we build ourselves up, we're choosing fascination. When we're dragging ourselves down, we we choose frustration. There's a difference here. And the difference is when we're frustrated, we want better outcomes. But all we want to do is complain about it and make everyone else around us miserable. But when we're fascinated, it has this natural curiosity about it, where we want better outcomes and we get to work looking at all the different possibilities to make it happen. Everything around us becomes an opportunity to create a positive outcome, regardless of our plans, regardless of our intentions, regardless of what's going on around us. So I am interested. At the very start, I asked you to think about a disruption to your life, something that didn't go as planned. And what I'm curious is how your experience of this may have been different if it was approached with fascination rather than frustration. We're going to have a little fun with this. Everyone turn to the person next to you. Now, if the person next to you turns to someone else, just turn to them. You're going to be in groups of 2 or 3. I'm going to give you just 2 minutes. You're going to share your frustrating experience, and then with an air of fascination, you'll explain why you're glad about it. I'll give you 2 minutes. Maintaining fascination in life is very difficult. It's a worthy challenge, but it is a challenge. And I'm going to offer this one last piece of encouragement. It's kind of like changing the shape of an ice cube. Now, if you think about it, there's 3 steps. 1, we have to melt the ice. Then we have to decide on a new shape that we want the ice to be in. And then we refreeze that ice in that new shape. And changing our perspective on life is kind of the same kind of process. And I'm encouraged by the words of the Pittsburgh Steelers when they bugged me, when they said, "Stay cool, give it up." We have to give up our old frustrating way of thinking and just let it melt away. And then decide on a new, more positive way of being, and then practice and hone this every single day until it freezes into a new habit, until it becomes a new, more positive and fascinating lifestyle. The important thing to remember, this is a challenge, but just start with where you are. Start with just one thing and start making positive changes. It's been a joy being here today. My name is Jonas, Cain.
Well, thank you, Jonas, for teaching us, I guess, a little bit, giving a little bit of enlightenment about positivity. Hope you take something away from it.